Hendrick Motorsports actually won. How? Hendrick Motorsports has won their appeal after the Phoenix penalty that they sustained when NASCAR took all 4 of the Hendrick Motorsports cars' hood levers following an inspection in pre-qualifying. Now, this, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that they won, but I am surprised at how much did they win, because in an odd twist, Hendrick Motorsports won the most important part of the appeal. The $100,000 fine that's levied against each team, that stays the same. The $400,000 fine, that stays. The 4 crew chiefs remain suspended for 4 races, but each get back their 100 driver and owner points. Outside of Chase Elliott, he only gets back the owner points. So this is what the point standings look like after HMS's appeal. But Alex Bowman is now back as the points leader, 26 points ahead of Ross Chastain. William Byron back up to 3rd in points. Kyle Larson is back to 9th in points. So why? What was the reasoning for it? Well, the thing is that we don't know exactly what did Hendrick Motorsports bring as evidence to say, hey, you need to change this penalty. Remember, they went to an independent motorsports panel. This is not NASCAR. And you know this is not NASCAR doing this because even NASCAR themselves weren't happy about it. NASCAR said in a statement, quote, "We are pleased that the National Motorsports Appeals Panel agreed that Hendrick Motorsports violated the rulebook. However, we are disappointed that the entirety of the penalty was not upheld. Points penalty is a strong deterrent that is necessary to govern the garage following rulebook violations. And we believe that it was an important part of the penalty in this case and moving forward. We will continue to inspect and officiate the NASCAR garage at the highest level of scrutiny to ensure a fair and level playing field for our fans and the entire garage." And that's the part that I'm confused by. If they agree that Hendrick Motorsports violated the rulebook, why are you only changing part of the penalty? It doesn't make sense. When you look at just sports, how they deal with penalties, you either keep everything of the penalty or you get rid of everything of the penalty. It's like football. You either have the call stand or you overturn it. That means you overturn all of the penalty. You don't overturn partial of the penalty. It's not like, let's say if you go offsides for 5 yards, it's not like, okay, you did it, but we're going to give you 3 yards instead. You get 3 yards back. No, you either stand it or you reverse it. One of the 2 things. You don't call it in the middle. Remember, in Hendrick's statement earlier in weeks prior, leading up to their appeal, they did say that there was a lack of communication with NASCAR, that the parts that they received weren't good parts. They were quote unquote crappy ass parts, if Kevin Harvick wants to chime in. That's what their argument was, and that they had to modify it to make it work. Whether it was that, whether it was the fact that maybe it was that fact that Hendrick Motorsports had their hood louvers taken away prior to cars being on the track, which I think is the only thing that's different between this situation and what happened with Brad Keselowski at Atlanta last March, or what happened with Michael McDowell, I believe, after Pocono last year, where the parts that were modified were used in competition. NASCAR took it back to the R&D center and they found what was wrong with the 2 cars. That's the only difference, is that this situation, the cars never hit the track. So maybe that's why. But then again, they violated the rule book. Why do you think they kept the fine and the crew chief suspended? They violated the rule book. So why are you only taking away, quite frankly, the most important part of the penalty? $400,000 in Hendrick Motorsports ain't that big of a deal. And having 4 of your crew chiefs suspended, keep in mind, this is early in the regular season, so it really doesn't affect that as well. Why only take away the only thing that matters most, and that is the 100 point reduction? Why is that rescinded? That to me, I don't understand. And again, this is not a NASCAR issue. This is an appeals board issue, because this is not the first time we've seen the Motorsports Appeal Board, which they changed. They have a new set of people every case. This is not the same group of people, but it does bring into light a couple things. That the panel, they now have a track history of appealing things. NASCAR created a system where, hey, you break the rules, we're going to go hard on you. Well, the appeals board is just rescinding everything or changing them to make it lighter. January 22nd, remember when Mike Harmon, I believe, tested at Rockingham, which you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to have your own testing session unless it's a NASCAR made it up. You can't do that. I believe they had a heavy penalty. I think it was something along the lines of a couple members being suspended indefinitely, a massive fine. I could be wrong about that part, but again, that was also a huge penalty, got rescinded for a lesser one. Matt Crafton DQ'd at Darlington, that got rescinded. Jeremy Clements, when he won at Daytona last fall and failed post-race inspection or failed inspection, that also got rescinded and he got the win back. There's something to do with an engine. Don't know exactly what parts of it, but also that was encumbered, but he got back the win. And then of course, last fall at Texas with William Byron, where he had, I think, a 20 or 25 point penalty that got rescinded for just a larger fine. There's a history here. I don't know how NASCAR fixes it or what they do with it, but this exposes a couple things. Not only that, the fact that the appeals board, they're really easy with it. This also opens a loophole for other teams. Again, I bring up with Front Row Motorsports when they had that 100-point penalty deduction. They could have done something along the lines of that. Go to the appeals board, say, hey, review this. And maybe that they could have rescinded that for maybe a larger fine, but they keep the points. It also brings into consideration future teams that if you do break the rules and you do appeal it, they have a history. The appeals team have a history of letting these teams off easy. Hendrick Motorsports should have, I believe, the penalty should have been kept. It should have been upheld. I'm not surprised that it got reversed, but I am surprised that it got reversed for just points. You either keep all the penalty or none of it. You can't just stay in the middle every single time. And NASCAR has a rule book. They have a plan. If you break the rules, this is what happens. I don't know. Like, to me, that just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, seeing that. Had they taken away everything, had they taken away the fine and taken away the suspensions, I'd be more okay with that than just keeping the fine and the suspensions. But nah, we'll take away the points. That to me makes no sense. It also then creates a bigger issue then, because remember, this is a spec car now. People or teams are buying supplies or buying parts and pieces from a vendor's list. If let's say, if it's true, because we really don't know exactly what they appeal, like what evidence they brought, but let's say then, hey, we had bad parts and NASCAR lack of communication, this and that. Well, then now you have a much bigger issue in terms of the vendors list, how the vendors manufacture the parts and make sure it goes out on time. It just, again, this whole situation opens up a whole can of worms. And it's just going to be very interesting to see how the appeals board deals with future cases this year and for years after, because I won't be surprised. This is not going to be the last time I think you're going to see a team get an L2 penalty or break a rule book or something along those lines. And I feel like we're going to hear the appeals panel come up once again later this year. And the question is going to be again, like, is this going to be a thing? Like, is every penalty that's going to be brought to the appeals board just going to be overturned for a lesser one? I mean, hell, even Denny Hamlin said, hell, I don't even know anymore. So again, nobody knows exactly what is the procedure? What's the process? What did they bring in? I mean, it leaves us all, at least for me, very confused, because it's like, again, I'm just reiterating my point, but again, it just leaves you to think, what the hell is the point of it, of having a penalty structure where we can just go to an appeals board, and just get it rescinded? And more penalties. Daniel Suarez, remember this incident that he did on pit road where he ran to the back of Ross Chastain, then ran to the back of Alex Bowman? Me and a lot of others suspected that he would get penalized for that, and he did. But only a fine, $50,000 to Daniel Suarez's pocket is being taken out because of his actions following that incident. Listen, me personally, I felt like it should have been steeper. I felt like he should have had a point reduction, because to me, the way I see it, I don't think a message gets across through their pocket. It gets across through where it hurts, their points. I think if you do that, you get more of a reaction like, okay, if you're gonna take my points away, all right, I better not mess up. If you can take away my money, okay, $50,000, take it. I keep my points. So I don't agree with that. I feel like it should have been a steeper penalty, but at least Daniel Suarez is having some fun with it. He posted this. Mate, don't worry, I got pairs for you, all right? I got socks for you. I will admit, That's funny. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the penalties that NASCAR gave out? But yeah, what are your thoughts on Daniel Suarez having a penalty? And of course, your thoughts on Hendrick Motorsports basically winning the appeal. I mean, they didn't totally win, but they won the most important part. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Until next time, my name is Jet from MDK. See you next time.